never fall in love with the development and always make business decisions with your head, not your heart.
You are listening to the Property Developer Podcast, your home for tips, ideas and inspiration to help take your developing to the next level. Now here's your host, Justin Getty.
Hello and welcome to episode 80 of the show. Thanks for joining me. So good to be with you again. How are you doing? Everything on track? I've been well. Had a very busy start to the year. Can't believe it's nearly May. Where's the year gone? Anyway, got a great conversation coming up for you today with two brothers who are joining forces to take on some larger property projects. But before we get to that, here's a quick update on my townhouse projects. On Project 1, construction is moving along quite nicely. Most of the site is at lock-up stage now, which is good. Actually had a meeting with a council enforcement officer last week on site to discuss noise complaints from a neighbour. Unfortunately, we were complying with our obligations, so no action will be taken against us, which is a relief. And I've been spending most of this week working through the usual buildability issues that pop up on a development site. On my other project, we are trying to finalise all the documentation and supporting materials so that we can go back into council for town planning endorsement and also to get our building permit. Seems we are getting approval for the shorter crossover alignment that I've been working on for about 12 months. I've been told by council that the permit's going to be approved, or the amended permit's going to be approved. I've also booked in the demolition of the existing house, so just waiting for the permit for that to come through so we can bowl it over and clean the site up. There's still a lot to do on this project with getting funding finalised and construction started, but it's all moving in the right direction. If you would like to see how my projects are progressing, then I suggest you check out the video updates that I post on the show's Facebook and Instagram feeds. They're both under the handle of Property Developer Podcast, so if you want to see what I'm up to, head over there and check it out. And if you are interested in getting into property development, head over to www.propertydevelopertraining.com and take the quick quiz to see how ready you might be to get started. Or if you feel like you'd like some mentoring, email me, justin@propertydeveloperpodcast.com, and I'll send you some information on the program that's available to guide you through the property development process. Okay, on to today's guests. Brothers Fayad and Remon Fayad from Ellerson Property in Sydney. Based in Parramatta in Sydney's west, Fayad and Remon have between them 40 years of experience in property, having grown up in a family of builders. The boys have joined forces to deliver a range of projects in the residential, retail and commercial sectors. In this chat, we discuss why they've decided to team up, their focus on understanding the customer journey, and what they learnt from the pullback of bank funding a few years ago. Keep an ear out for the discussion around running design competitions and how they make that work for them. I started off by asking the boys about what food they would eat until they were sick, and Remon started off with an answer that I'm surprised more people don't nominate.
Mum's chicken and rice, Lebanese dish that she does. That's my favourite one. So,
what about you, Fayad?
I guess my weakness, which is what I've been staying away from at the moment, would be my good Italian pizzas.
Yeah, pizza's an easy one. You got any go-to toppings?
Go-to topping, mushroom topping. Cheese, mushroom, garlic.
Pepperoni. You gotta put that in there.
My weakness.
Well, we're here today to talk about property developing, and the two of you have been involved in property development, and you've partnered up and set up your own developing company. But give us a bit of a background of yourselves and how you got into developing and what you're up to.
I've been in property for 20 years now, straight out of school. Was lucky enough to be involved in a family business at the outset, predominantly in construction. So construction background, getting buildings up, more of the hands-on, and then more recently involved in property development side of the business, acquisition, funding, and project marketing. And then up until recently, found that that's probably my cup of tea, and teamed up with Remon to start this new venture at Ellerson. So yeah.
And what about you, Remon?
Myself. I guess it's in our blood. So we're in development since we're since we're born. Great grandfather was in construction back in Lebanon. Our grandfather started the original business here when he moved over early mid 60s. And then, our whole life it's been property. So going to family barbecues, going to family, it's just always property with the uncles and cousins. Everyone's involved in it. So there was really, there's no escape, but it's always in you. So it just naturally, it's involved. And like Fayad, straight from school, went onto the construction side and started from there.
And then how did you get into doing projects?
Again, just from starting from construction on site, seeing how it all unfolded, obviously learning from our father, who guided us and was our role model, just learning from him. And Ellerson now gives us an opportunity to start our official first developments together. There was developments that we were doing under the family umbrella together, but this is our real coming alive. We're coming out now doing our first one together. It's one in Parramatta, which is our heartland. So it's an exciting one. It's a build to rent one. So one that we will always keep. So it'll always have a bit of sentimental value. It's a build to rent product. So our first one and one that we'll always keep within the business.
And Fayad, what sort of projects were you doing along the way? Were they townhouse projects, apartment projects? What were you sort of cutting your teeth on?
Straight out of school, I was labouring on apartment projects. My first foray as a site foreman was actually 14 townhouses in Carlingford. So my first project under my guidance or leadership were townhouses. After that, more in multi-density, so multi-dwelling sort of apartments, townhouses, duplexes, villas, so that sort of space. More recently, focused on apartments, medium density, high density. That's where we are at the moment.
Yeah, and what about you, Ramon? What sort of projects were you cutting your teeth on?
I've got a bit more of an interesting background when I started construction. Straight out of school, went onto the construction site, obviously just thinking it was going to be part of me and following in Fayad's footsteps, following my dad's footsteps. Probably about a month after HSE, went on site. About a month into it, I was on a townhouse site as well, probably about 25 townhouses, and doing the course in TAFE, doing the building course, and just came home one day and pulled mum aside and said, I don't know how to tell you this, but I don't like construction. So I always went to mum first. She was always a soft one you can talk to. I was a bit worried about what dad's going to think. So, and she said, what are you worried for? So then I had to go through it all and mention it to dad. And dad was like, yeah, it's no big deal. I was like, oh, it's a bit easier than I thought. So he said, yeah, go out, do whatever you want. I think in the back of his mind, he always knew I would eventually come back, and it's what I did. So I left the company for a bit and went off and got into sports management. So managing football players and managing sports players, which, I was always into sport growing up, rugby league, soccer, swimming, basketball, the whole lot. So always had that idea in my mind. But again, dad was right. After about a year, I came back to him and said, okay, can you find me another job? So then he put me in the office, and so it wasn't so much the construction side of it. It was more the development side. So acquisition, planning, sales, that kind of stuff, which has been a good balance for Fayad and myself. Fayad was always the construction eye, and I was a bit more of the development. So it worked out well in the end. Now we're overseeing all of it together, but he's always got that extra eye on construction, and from a development and planning side, it's that's probably my stronger point.
And Fayad, how come you decided that you would team up?
We work together hand in hand in the business. Predominantly, Ramon looked after the functions of, as he just mentioned, acquisition, planning, and whereas my strengths were in construction and delivery. We were the pair previously, and we just decided to continue. I guess it was a natural connection. Just an extension or a new chapter of what we were and what we were doing best previously. So,
I think taking nothing away from what the old generation did, it was just we had the experience, we had the knowledge, we had the support of family to do it, and I think it was just the right time. It was just we were doing our own thing. We were starting to do it bit by bit, but now we wanted to officially make it our own company and start our own thing.
So it'd be fair to say that the projects that you're working on previously within your dad's business was around delivering projects for other clients, or were you doing a mix of your own stuff plus for clients?
Yeah, but for the last 10 years, 10 to 15 years was a lot of our stuff. I mean, we do the odd development for local school, a local affordable housing community. So we did bits and pieces of that, but no, majority of it was for ourselves. So owner, occupier, builder, developer, we did it all ourselves.
And what were the lessons that you took away from that period of time that you now plan on bringing into your own company?
A lesson for myself would be starting your own company. You want to make your own decisions and you want to see it the way you have a vision, you want to deliver it that way, but it's just being open-minded. Listen to what people are telling you. That's a big thing in our industry in particular. I mean, people are telling us what they want in an apartment. So we've got to listen to them. It's not, we're going to design it this way, you have to buy it. So across the whole board, whether it be finance, sales, marketing, it's listening, being open-minded. I mean, we do have the experience in property, but we've hired the right people in their roles to tell us and guide us what to do. So in short, what I've learned most is listen to other people and listen to people who you've brought on rather than think you know everything.
What about for you, Fayad?
I did this a lot early in my career is have people in I guess categories or boxes, so that an architect would do X, a plumber would do X. Later on in my career, and definitely something that I've learned and want to bring over, is to not limit people's discussions or interactions with them from their expertise, because it doesn't matter what they do. Everyone here and everyone in this circle is in the property industry, and they've all got a voice, they've all got a experience that they'd like to share. So one thing that I have definitely taken on board and want to spread through the culture in our new entity is not connect people so much with their titles. So, or their job roles or their expertise. Is just, if someone has a good point to say, whether that's not in his area, take it on board and embrace it.
And you touched on, I think you mentioned that you're also responsible for project marketing, Fayad. Is that a bit of a change? Well, it generally would be a change from being in charge of delivery on the construction side to then the softer side on the marketing front.
Yeah, so in project marketing is at the moment shared between Ramon and I. We do have a marketing manager here. We have a sales manager here that oversee marketing and sales teams. It's a different ball game to construction, but it's one that I watched keenly while I was in construction. I was very interested in how real estate offices would market projects. And then towards probably the last, I'd say 5 to 10 years, we actually started to sell in-house. So we had our in-house real estate agent teams, which then meant that we had to do our own project marketing, which then brought in a project marketing team. So I always had a keen eye, or always had a interest in how a third-party agent would market a project for a developer, where they would place the ads, how they would add it, how display suites and all that stuff. So when it actually got time to do that, I kind of embraced it, and it was really like a break from the everyday construction. It allowed me to have, I guess, my creative sense was at play in that space.
And so what do you reckon the sort of 1 or 2 key things that you learnt along the way about the project marketing that you're looking to implement now?
The key to project marketing is, and one thing we do want to implement now is, it's apart from having the apartment designed well, the selections up to scratch, it's actually the experience of buying an apartment. That is very important. So we're very mindful of the experience that our buyers or our potential buyers are about to get involved with. So we're mapping now the journey of an apartment buyer from first interest in apartment to actually picking up their keys. And we just want to make sure that the marketing and the involvement of, it's not just putting a for sale sign and make sure that the apartment is sold, and then delivering the keys 6 weeks later. And one thing that gave longevity to a lot of apartment developers in the past, or even real estate companies in the past, it's the journey that the customer experiences, and then that will then get their buy into the company, not just the apartment itself, the actual company, and then allow, if they were to buy another project or another apartment, that naturally like the experience they've had with us and like to buy another one of our apartments. So I guess it's all about not just the apartment, but the journey of purchasing.
Yeah, I've often thought I would absolutely love to be a fly on the wall during the time when the selling agents that I use are talking to potential buyers, and just being able to listen in to the questions that the buyers ask, and also the things that the agents tell them. It would just be absolutely priceless to have that kind of intelligence and insight. How have you divvied up the roles and responsibilities then?
Again, I think you just naturally lean back to what your strengths are. Fayad is still, he's still more on site more than I am, but I'm still just naturally gravitating towards meeting and having nice, friendly discussions with council, trying to get things approved. So yeah, just naturally, again, but we are obviously meet all the time. Our fortnightly meetings, we used to split them up. Now they're all just, we're involved in every single one of them. So yeah, the roles have now just, kind of doing the same thing. But again, just, naturally gravitating back towards our key strengths does come into play. But I think over time, it'll just be more, literally split down like 50-50, and we'll be making the decisions together on everything.
And you touched on your first project. Can you give us a bit of insight around what that looks like?
Yeah, so that's the one in Park Street, Parramatta, which is our first build to rent. It's 22 levels above retail in CBD Parramatta. It's 150 plus apartments in there. Combination of studios all the way up to 3 bedrooms with top level penthouse apartments. So that's one that it's coming up. So we're on to level 7 at the moment as we speak. And it's a precast construction build. We've done that in the past, but they were generally precast concrete, then painted or cladded or something. But this is an exciting one. It's going to be an exposed concrete building, obviously with elements that'll make it more residential, I guess. But just the way it's all coming together, the walls coming off the back of the truck, being installed, and that's the end product. So it's very exciting for that one, definitely.
That's his construction site. See, it just naturally comes back. So, but again, I'll touch on the design here because it's quite an interesting design. This building. We'll send you some pictures through so you can see. But it's actually a stepped building. So while it's 23 stories, one side's 23, and then it steps down like every couple of levels because it's built next to a park. So a part of the whole design competition was to minimise the overshadowing of the park. So it's quite a striking design. It'll be a signature building in Parramatta because there's very, very few buildings designed in that way. So it'll be one great one that we're looking forward to delivering and keeping in the portfolio for a long time.
Sorry, did you say there was a design competition?
Yes, this one went through a design competition probably 24 months ago now.
Yeah, tell us about that.
It was good. Any significant development in Parramatta over a certain amount of value needs to go through a design competition. And this one was an interesting one because the major design key was to not overshadow the park. So there was quite a few interesting designs how to do that. There was some that had gaps missing in the building. It was curved. But this one, the step building just made sense. It looked great cost-wise as well. You have to keep that in mind. But and it had the best outcome for layouts of apartments. So it was a good design competition. We've done quite a few of them now. It's good. It's good to go through the design competitions. You pick up things that you wouldn't have done if it was just a straight DA. And then what you can take from it is in your next development site or you find a new architect, you find new ideas. So while the winning design obviously doesn't win, it's a good opportunity to just learn new things and learn new designs.
So is that a process that's run by the council, or do you run that? And how do
Yeah.
you choose people
Yeah.
that are
So
involved?
the way it works is, so council, you have to do it, part of like a council requirement. We get to pick the 3 architects. So you pick 3 architects, and then state government has, and then there's a judging panel of 3. We pick a panel, we pick a judge, sorry. So there has to be like experience within property. So it could be like a town planner, an architect, or an urban designer. So they're one of the judges. The other judge is someone that council picks, and then the government architect picks someone as well. So usually about a 4 to 6 week period for the architects to present get their designs ready, and then another a week, or probably about a week or 2 process of presenting, doing presentations, and then the panel goes away in about a week or 2. They pick a winner, and then from there you do your DA. That architect is locked in to do your DA process. So it's probably about a 2 to 3 month process from start to finish of a design competition. Again, depending on how big it is. We've done others where it's a 1,000 unit block with about 20,000 square meters of commercial. That's another one that we've done. So that was a lot trickier. We council wanted 9 architects. Obviously, will delay you and drag out a bit more and a bit more costly. But it's just getting involved with council early. We get to write the design brief as well, which obviously helps, because if you gave council free rein to do a design brief, they put gold panels everywhere. So which is good. So we've done quite a lot of them now, so we know how to do them to the best for council and best for us. So
I was going to ask you about the design brief, so it's good that you've got control of that.
Yeah.
And then with the project, what was the reasoning behind wanting to do build for rent? Was that mainly driven by the softness of the market, or was it a strategic move to grow your balance sheet?
Yeah, so this one in Parramatta was, we decided that on the outset this would be a build to rent, predominantly because of the location being in Parramatta. And we did, as I mentioned earlier, we had some projects that ended up having residual stock. We kept so that we had that. Then we learned the build to rent function and adopted it within our business. So then the next round of projects, we earmarked this one in Parramatta to actually be built to rent from the outset. So we had a discussion with our funding partner. So we structured the loan and the deal to have, in the sense of, so there's no pre-sales or no requirement to sell the apartments. It was structured in a way which enabled us to complete and then and keep and have tenants and rent them and eventually have something for the long term to hold and add to our pipeline of retained apartments.
And there's another development that we're doing in Parramatta too. So obviously we can't compete with ourselves. So we're doing one that's across the road actually. That's we're currently selling there at the South Quarter development. So just a bit of flexibility. And again, to show our range as well, we can do the build to rent and we can do the traditional build to sell.
I was about to ask about your pipeline, so I'm glad that you jumped in there. Tell us a bit about the other project, the build to sell one.
There's quite a bit of build to sell in the pipeline. 2 that stand out for me would be one in Rosebery, which is called the Laneways. The reason it stands out is because we probably kind of stepped out of our comfort zone a bit and moved out of Western Sydney. It's 118 apartments, scheduled to be finished by March next year. Sales have been going well, and another interesting thing about that is the buyers. In the Western Sydney, it's a lot of investor buyers, people wanting just to get into the property market, where at Rosebery we've seen it's a lot of people, owner occupiers. So quite a few variation requests and changes and do this and do that and extra parking and whatnot. So it's been a learning experience, but it's been a good development. It's been received well by the local public and as well by the agents who said, the quality is good. And even in a tough market, it's still selling well, which is good. So at good prices. That's one basically because it's a bit out of our comfort zone. But the one coming back closer, I think would have to be Marylands, which is our Marylands development right in the town centre on Maryland Station. I just think in terms of location, affordability and growth, Marylands is probably it's like the little brother of Parramatta, but significantly cheaper and a lot more affordable. We've found that a lot of people buying there can't afford to buy in Parramatta, so they're just naturally coming there. And it's amazing. I mean, I think it's like $200,000 price difference from Marylands to Parramatta, and it's only like it's one station, 5-minute drive. So it's I definitely think Marylands is great development, but even for people looking in the future for investment, even to live, I think that's Marylands would be the area that I'd tell someone to buy if they ask me for their opinion.
And you just touched on around moving out of your comfort zone and it being a learning experience being in Rosebery. What are the other lessons, or what are the things that you're learning along the way there?
The idea of bringing and listening to the end user, the customer and the apartment buyer, and to how they want their apartments designed. This project, it gave us the opportunity to deal with it on the run rather than have something to say, well, we'd like to be the developer that listens to apartment buyers and designs it for them. While we were doing that, we were actually dealing with sales on the run. So it gave us real life working examples to allow us to step out of our comfort zone or do something different, but at the same time, not just plan for it and then roll it out, actually plan for it, but doing it as you're planning and as you're building the processes. So actually gave us a good real life working example.
Yes, well, based on my own experience, the variations of where the problems tend to pop up towards the end or at the end.
Yeah. Definitely.
Like I said, we're usually selling off the plan, so it's don't really have to deal with that much. But Rosebery, it's a different market, but it's good. We've learned, and it's probably something that would look to continue to do more, spread our rings a bit, and keep staying out of our comfort zone, get a bit more Sydney wide rather than just Western Sydney. I think we're ready for it now. If the opportunity did come up again.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you touched on learning experiences, because I was keen to know whether there's been a challenging obstacle or a setback at some point in a project or along the way that at the time was pretty challenging, but then upon reflection, you look back and go, it was a fantastic learning experience.
Shopping centre build. So we actually completed a project in Parramatta that had rather than just having a left behind retail at the ground floor, is actually built supermarket with a shopping centre surrounding with apartments on top. That one, my previous work was predominant in residential. So one key takeaway from building that project was definitely a lot of planning needed to come in place. It flipped the planning from building apartments, then building some shells at the base, and then just allowing the tenants to fit out. With a shopping centre, it was a major learning curve, because the tenants, we needed to do a lot of the fit out for them, and particularly because we kept that shopping centre. Where I'm going to is that it redirected the project management team and the everyday processes on site to be more. And I guess this happens every day, but in our sense, and from, I guess, a big learning curve was to, which we've now taken on board and been able to learn from moving forward, is that previous to that, we were building apartments with retail spaces that were just filled in at the end. That one project, we commenced, and at the outset, we had that mentality in mind and that mindset in mind. But then as we were building through, we worked out that a lot of our attention diverted from completing the apartments to coming back down to the shopping centre. And then I guess it kind of shifted the thought pattern after we completed that project from looking at all avenues of the project during construction, at the outset for planning. So it may not sound as a big learning curve to someone else, but the reason why it stands out to me is because it shifted our flow or our natural rhythm from being apartment builders with retail at the base to actually real mixed use precinct deliverers. if that's a word. So that was one big takeaway, that we didn't plan from the outset, but we learnt on the first-hand experience on the way through, which were then radically changed our processes moving forward in terms of construction planning.
And what about you, Ramon? You got one that stands out?
Not one in particular. It was obviously recently, probably 2 years ago, when the whole bank Royal Commission came into play. That kind of threw the property industry, threw it out a little bit, threw a few spanners in the works. Obviously, day to day, it was dealing with the big four banks, and that was it. Royal Commission came in and they kind of just said, we're not doing any more construction, land, anything. So that was literally like an overnight thing. It wasn't finish this job and then see you later. It was just, we're not doing any more. So that was a big learning curve for me, which turned out to be good because it allowed us the opportunity to travel overseas, meet new funders, deal with Chinese, Hong Kong, even Indian banks, Singaporean, and just showing what we could deliver and showing our track record. There was no hesitation. There was no doubt by these funders. You were dealing with business people. You were dealing with people that was their own money. So they wanted to see deals get done. And when we showed our portfolio, when we showed our track record, there was no hesitation, and it ended up being a better outcome because it's allowed us to grow and acquire more property and do like this build to rent. So dealing with the funders now, we've met them. I mean, a natural normal bank would very, very rarely allow you to do a build to rent. You have to sell 100% of your product, even more, to start construction. I mean, in this market, that's just not going to happen. So while it not shook us up, while it just readjust when it first came in, this whole Royal Commission, it was what we do now, but it turned out to be a great thing. I mean, you pay a bit more with the private lenders, but they do it 1,000 times quicker. So yeah, it turned out to be a better way. And I think that'll just be the way moving forward. I think the banks now they'll eventually come back, but I mean, I think they've just kind of lost their edge in terms of construction and property finance now. So yeah, that's probably the biggest one for me that made us adjust quickly, and yeah, I've learned a lot from.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting to see what happens with the funding market over the next couple of years, because as you say, in those soft conditions, getting 100% debt cover is really challenging, and the project may not even be that risky.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Which is now you're seeing a lot of build to rent. So it did take a while for build to rent to come up, but now the government's allowing a lot more incentives, and funders are starting to, and financiers are starting to understand it a bit more. So yeah, I think it is the way of the future, the private funding.
And then what's the best piece of advice you reckon you've ever received?
Yeah, from my dad. When I first got back into the development side of it, he bought a site in Parramatta. There's another gateway site, actually close to the one that we're doing in the build to rent one now. It's literally across the road from that. It was my first one where I did the DA on my own, did a design competition, got the approval. So I was young too, and I got it all done. It was like a 36-story tower. I was proud of myself. And then got it approved. And a couple of weeks later, Dad said, we're selling that. I was like, no, but I've done all this. I've got this approved for you. What are you doing? And he said, no, we're getting a good price. Let's go. Let's move on. Let's buy it. Let's sell it. Go buy a few more and move on. I was actually upset with myself. So he pulled me aside, and they just said that the line that he said to me is like, never fall in love with the development, and always make business decisions with your head, not your heart. And while we do love and stand behind our products, it makes sense. I mean, you need to keep moving. You can't, stop. And if you get too attached to something, it's you're going to end up spending more, or leaning towards it a bit more and neglecting the others. So that's the piece of advice that's stuck with me. It's just do it based on business decisions with your head, not your heart, and don't fall in love with the property.
Fayad, what about you? Did you get the same piece of advice from your old man, or you got something different for us?
I get slightly different, but I guess the same mindset. He'd always be, and this is probably the one I live by very, very regularly. He'd say, and he still does say, he stick with your plan, your vision, your target, don't take your eye off your target, but be flexible in the approach. So although you may have a target in your mind or an achievement set out for 1, 2, 3 years' time, don't change that, but be adaptive with the plan. So you may set out on a plan to start with to achieve that goal. Couple weeks in, couple months in, couple days in, that plan may not roll out the way you want it to be. So you just accept the fact that the pathway to that goal would always be changing. And that way would allow you to adapt and get there. Because if you are stuck on your path to achieve that goal and there's an obstacle in the way, you'll never get there. So you got to look at different opportunities and different ways to get there, as long as it ultimately leads to that goal, to that target. So just be flexible. Fixed on the target, flexible in the approach.
Yeah.
Yes, that's it.
And then what about your top tip to people that are listening out there that are thinking, I want to take my developing business to the next level? What would your top piece of advice be for them?
To have a balance still in life. If you want to do development, that's great, but I still think you need to step away from it at the same time. Not step away, have a break. You know what I mean? Like don't be 24/7 property, otherwise you'll burn out. I mean, we do live and breathe property, but as soon as we leave the office, it stops. And my switch off is basketball or something. Like I look up to LeBron James, so when I finished work, I'll go home and I'll just watch him, and that'll just clear your mind of the day you've had and just let you switch off. So just having another hobby. I mean, being passionate about what you do, but also having that flexible work-life balance would be my tip.
Fayad, what about you?
My tip would be more like industry specific. A lot of developers out there are very numbers based. They're very put projects together based on spreadsheets and that. So I guess just have a bit of fun in your development, and that gives you longevity. And what I mean by fun is build something that you'd like to live in. Don't always think, well, this is not right for the area, or don't worry, this is only a rental, or this is just be a bit more flexible, be a bit more imaginative in apartments, because it gives you pride in what you do. It generates a great culture around you, and it's key to longevity in the industry, both internally from your own staff, but externally as well from the end users. So just be a bit flexible and kind of shake the rules a little bit from typical property development 101, I guess. Just have a bit of fun and put up apartments that you'd like to live in.
Fantastic. Well, if people want to find out more about you or about Ellerson's, where should they head?
So they can head to our website, ellersonproperty.com.au. They can get in touch with us there, or they could come visit us in Parramatta. So we're happy to take your call or be ready to show you around. So.
Also social media, got the big, gradually building that up. Obviously new companies, so slowly building up that LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Jump on there, follow us, see the developments that we're doing, what's coming up. And it's also not just always about property on our socials. It's more about our staff, other things that are happening in the industry all over the world, whatnot. So you can jump on there and kind of see what Ellerson's all about.
Fantastic. Well, it's been great speaking with you today, guys, hearing your story and where you've come from. Sounds like you've got some great projects on the go, and I'm sure there's more to come. I really appreciate you sharing your tale with us today on the Property Developer Podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
All right. We'll see you next time.
See you then.
You've been listening to the Property Developer Podcast. Tune in next time for more tips, ideas and inspiration to take your developing to the next level. For more developing love, make sure to visit propertydeveloperpodcast.com.